Welcome to Emotional Support Water Bottle with Hannah and Ailish.
I'm Hannah.
And I'm Ailish. I guess we can give our thoughts on the Super Bowl, even though it's gonna be like a
It's
week
like a week
old and
later.
nobody's gonna care. But
I know.
um, I did. There weren't really many of the commercials that stood out to me.
No, me either. I thought there was which I can't even really remember it now, but there was kind of a fun Glenn Powell one. I was like, oh, I kind of like that. And then there's like one other one I liked. I can't think of it.
I
And
didn't
that
see
was
the
kind of
Glen
it.
Powell one.
Yeah, I don't even remember what it was for, but it was just fun. Like it was like him like dressed with like this long hair, like he was like playing a character, and it was just kind of fun. Like I
Yeah,
was like, that was a good get for him or them too.
I liked the one with William Defoe and Catherine O'Hara I think it was for like Myth Ultra or something, and they were swindling people at pickleball.
Wait, I feel like I didn't see that one.
They were like, with the young people, and they're like, oh, we'll play you for those drinks. And they're like, okay, but we're pretty good. And they're like, oh, well, let's just do it. And then they go out on the court, and William Defoe and Catherine O'Hara are like beasts at pickleball, and they're beating everybody. Yeah, that one was funny.
It's always so. Oh, did you see the super long Tom Cruise one?
No, I mean, how did we? No,
We're like watching at different times.
I know. I know. But I saw where people thought he looked weird in the face.
Yeah, but that didn't surprise me though, because it kind of feel it's like everybody gets like work done and stuff. But it was like I can't remember what it was for, but it would just like intercut with him on this like really dramatic reading. I don't know, just not, and it just kept going on and on. And I was like, okay.
So I missed like kind of the beginning and then a part before the halftime show. So I must have just missed at those times. Or maybe
Yeah, I
because
think that one was right at the beginning.
Oh, okay. I feel
Yeah, I
like there
missed
was one other one.
I know, I think there was one that I liked, and I was like, "Oh, I like this."
I can't remember though.
No, I think the only part I missed after the halftime show, I took the kids to bed.
Mm.
So I think I missed a little bit. Like I still kind of had it on my phone, but I just missed a little bit of it and then came back out.
The halftime show was good.
I know. We were having so much fun. I was like, let's get up and dance. And we were trying to do the choreography. And then when they were doing marching in a circle, that the boys were just going crazy. It was so much fun.
Hannah had a video of her one son just like grooving on the couch.
Loving it. He was like, yeah. And I was like, let's get up. And everyone was up running around, which is kind of a mistake because then I tried to get them to go to sleep right after that last thing. But I thought it was really good though. And then when a SZA was out, I was like, and then the boys were like,
Aww.
it
I
was
know.
so fun.
The only thing I wish that would have been different is that SZA would have had like one of her own songs. Because sometimes
Yeah, and just
do
had
that.
like a little, yeah, like a little like intermission-y part.
Just because I like her so much. But I mean, I thought it was great, and I loved seeing all the symbolism or things that we missed when you watch it the first time. Like, you don't necessarily, you're just taking it in.
I know, because I really wasn't until people, which sounds bad, but it's like until people started pointing stuff out, like on TikTok, I was like, oh,
No,
because I
totally. Me
was just
too.
enjoying it. Yeah, just like having fun listening to the music.
Yeah, and I thought it was really cool, like, it just looked good the whole
Yeah.
time, and yeah, I thought it was good. I mean, you can't compare somebody like Kendrick Lamar to, like, Lady Gaga, you know what I mean? They're 2
Right.
completely different styles of music and performances, so I know some people that kind of just, like, took it for what it was, and they're like, "Well, it wasn't super entertaining," and, like, I can see where they're coming from with that because it's
Mhm.
not the most exciting show, you know?
I know. I saw people say that. Like it was more of a I mean, but like guys I feel like are different performers than women too. Like it's like
Mhm.
women are expected to do these huge big spectacles and I actually thought he did a lot for a male performer as far as like all the backup dancers and stuff and I thought it looked really cool with like some people dressed in the red, the white and the blue. I thought that worked really good and I love that he had like female backup dancers and the guys. But I was thinking too with like cuz I saw some just videos of some people like in the audience and how it the halftime shows always look so cool like on camera for us. But I wonder what some of them actually look like if you're in the stadium.
I know, because we see, like, what you're meant to see with just, like, the one
Yeah,
shot, you know, but they see the whole thing the whole time.
I know, and it's almost like it would looked kind of like small and like he was on or like everyone was on like a platform, but it wasn't really raised. Maybe it was raised up. I can't remember, but we were getting like the zoom ins and the pull
Yeah.
outs. And I remember there was one time too where it was like an aerial shot, and I saw the cameraman there, and I was like, oh my gosh, that can and how, and then I was like, oh my gosh, there literally is a cameraman like following them
I
around. Like
know.
it's
I
just so wild.
I saw a TikTok and it was from somebody in the audience and they were showing the cameraman like following Kendrick and like turning around and walking backwards and then he had somebody with him cuz at some points there were like a small step up and he had the camera guy's obviously looking through the lens and not watching
Hmm.
his feet so the other guy would be there to like let him know there's a step here like be careful. That was
That's like
crazy
an
to see.
art. Yeah, that's like he was doing his own choreography, which is crazy. Like you have to be there during rehearsals. Like
Yeah.
it's just wild to think about. I've never really thought about it until this
Seeing
time.
that, I know. I saw one video too that Serena Williams posted about rehearsals and I mean you know that they do rehearsals like crazy ahead of time and stuff like that because
Hmm.
obviously they want it to be perfect. But she was there practicing her crip walk and everything with everybody and knowing when she had to come out and all this stuff. Like it was a lot for her, and she was only on the screen for what, like 15 seconds?
I know, literally. And just to be like ready to come out on your part.
Yeah.
And it was just, yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was just I could see too. I mean, this could be for any act that they have. If you don't know the person's music, it's not as
Yeah.
entertaining either, you know?
I know, like, this was a good get for them, especially coming right off of the Grammys, but if you're not paying attention to that, or if you're not hip with the music,
Yeah.
you might not have been that into it.
I know. I told my grandpa, I was like, "You're not gonna like the halftime show. Just you're not gonna
I
like it."
already know.
And then he was like, I didn't know who that was. They should have Willie Nelson on there." I'm like, well, that's not the vibe.
You could do the national anthem, maybe.
Yeah. And then he
I know, it is right. Well, it is like they wanna appeal to people and try to do a variety, but I feel like the halftime shows the past few years have been pretty good. Like, I've been enjoying them.
Well, I forgot last year was Usher,
Mhm. And that
and
one, I know a lot of people weren't like said he was just dancing, but I still thought it was entertaining. But I
mhm,
wonder now, like, I wonder what it was like in the actual stadium where we got to see him close up, like
yeah,
sweating and
yeah, I know, but I literally forgot about him and thought that last year was Rihanna, but it
Mhm.
I, like, skipped a whole year in my head.
And then the year before Rihanna was the Eminem
Yeah, that
one,
was the
wasn't it?
mashup one, right?
Yeah, that was see that I really liked that one too.
Yeah, that was good. Who was on that? Was it,
Mary J.
Nelly?
Blige, 50 Cent.
Oh, 50 Cent, yeah.
Oh, I don't remember who else. But yeah,
Yeah,
and 50 Cents was good. Yeah, I remember that was a good one.
that was like how it used to be when was Dr. Dre in that too?
Yeah.
I think he was. That was how it used to be when they would do multiple acts and multiple
Mhm.
people, and then they'd each have, like a couple minutes to do, ah, my screen flew away. Okay. Anyway, they'd each have like a couple minutes to do their own like mashup songs and stuff, and then um it was fun, but then all that ended when we had the Justin and
Janet Jackson,
yeah, disaster.
the full nudity on a family show.
I know, so bad. Which
Yeah,
I literally like remember it happening, but I don't
I know.
remember like realizing what had happened.
No, I just remember like I saw it, but it's almost like you don't think when because we were little. It's
Yeah,
like you didn't think there was really anything wrong with
yeah.
we weren't thinking like what the
I know, like I didn't realize that it was gonna be such a big deal as it
I
was.
know. Then she was like blacklisted.
I know.
Like
And
it was like
Justin
she did it on
didn't
purpose.
know.
Right. Right. Oh my
But I don't
gosh.
know. I go back and forth kind of because like that was nice to get a variety of different people and then you could have the cool mashups with like two genres coming together or whatever. But it is kind of nice just to have somebody like it was so cool with Rihanna because we got to hear stuff from her
Mhm.
whole career and it's kind of more entertaining to do it that way because it's like new and nostalgic.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, she had a especially because we don't really get to see her perform anymore.
I know. And I saw or I heard on the radio they were like, "Oh, they should have like Chapel Roan and newer artists." I'm like, "No, they shouldn't because the whole point of it is to have somebody who's had a longer career where they can have, their big hits being played and not somebody
Right.
who's new."
Right, because that's what people want to see is like that stuff they remember and those artists they remember and getting to see that again.
Yeah.
Not
But
just a
yeah,
brand new concert.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know that Rock Nation, Jay-Z's production or his company, his record label, that they had the like not the rights, but that they have the say of who does the Super Bowl. Like they are a part of the
Oh.
selection committee for that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either, but and then obviously Apple Music has like a huge part in it because it's sponsored by them too.
Mhm.
Just interesting.
I know, like I feel like this time it like worked out really well, like we said, coming off of the Grammys, but you wouldn't have necessarily been able to predict that when you were figuring it out, and obviously had that really big moment this summer
Yeah,
with the
I
feud
know.
and everything. So
But
I
yeah, I
wonder
mean,
if
this is planned well ahead.
right. Like that was a good that was just a really good timing and a good get.
Seriously, it worked out
Mhm.
perfectly.
Another thing too I thought was cool was watching them take that set down really fast and the
Yeah,
way they
like
just like
crazy.
swing.
I
They were
know.
like like
Running.
literally. I thought that was so cool too, just like that behind the scenes thing that if you were actually there at the stadium, you'd get to see.
I know, yeah. I even saw when they were doing the little, like, halftime report or whatever, and behind them, you could see them getting the car set up, and Kendrick was
Mhm.
just standing up there. Like, that was cool too.
That was cool. I wonder what that feels like to perform like, if you're doing a concert, that's crazy, but then to know that it's on live TV and you're doing this huge stadium, I feel like that'd be so
I know.
crazy. But I guess if you do like any other award shows like the Grammys, you might be used to it, but
It's
that'd
a
just be crazy.
huge, yeah, but it there's more pressure, because you're appealing to the whole
Mhm,
country that's watching, and now it's more worldwide. People are watching and judging
mhm.
it.
And then just like the timing of everything, like make sure
Mhm.
you start on time because we have all
Yeah,
this stuff we have to keep in mind. It's
yeah,
wild
I know, but yeah, I thought it was good. I liked it. I Kendrick is literally having like the year of his life. It's
moment. Yeah,
insane. Yeah. So I wonder how much his tickets for him and SZA will be.
I know. Especially now.
Yeah,
Grammy winning
I
artist.
know. But yeah, the game, I mean, I didn't really care that much about the game. I have to say I was like absolutely shocked though that the Chiefs basically just freaking got it handed to them like
I
they,
know. They
oh, it was
really just
painful.
I know you could just see like the pressure of it just
Mhm.
totally working up to that moment and then just to have play the worst you've ever played, right,
Literally the worst.
at the Super Bowl, and it was I know, it was so and then those, um what was I gonna say? Just or even at the end too when there was only, like, a couple and I'm not, big on watching football. But it was just, like, those last few seconds, they were already just, like, running off the
Yeah,
field. Like, there's nothing you can do and already dumping the Gatorade on the coach,
I
and
know. There's like 30 seconds left, and they're like, or there was more than that. I feel like there
it
was
was
like
a
two
lot yeah, it
minutes,
was
and they
yeah.
dumped it on.
They're like, "They're not getting this now."
No, I thought, I think that Travis has been doing some experimental things fashion wise recently, and I think that he must have regretted his choice when he
I
had to
know.
do his
The
interview.
sparkly. I know. Saw the comments, him in his sparkly red shirt. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, that's so funny."
Like, he looked like a fool.
He looked so sad too. I
I
mean, like, his
know.
eyes were literally like, his eyebrows were in, like, that exact sad pose. I was
So
like,
downturned,
I
yeah.
like, he was like, it was almost like a shock sadness.
Well, I think he said in one of the interviews that we played the worst ever. Like, damn.
I know, I was like, "Oh, dear." And then
That's what
when the Eagles were just, like, going insane, like,
I
they were just like
know. I know. That's what we said, like, to be the partner, the spouse of an athlete in a
I
situation like
know.
that, like, I I mean, I don't even know how you comfort someone. Like, I think I'd be
I
like,
know.
"Oh, hi."
Here.
Like,
I know,
pat
because if
on
it
the
was, like,
back.
a really close game or something, you're like, "Man, we
Yeah.
almost had it," but when it was something like that, I feel like you just maybe wouldn't talk to him till the next day.
Oh, literally.
Because what are you supposed to be like, "It's okay," and pat
Yeah.
him on the back? It's like,
Like,
no.
they're so mad. That's the kind of anger and, like, just frustration where when they got home, like, any of the Chiefs players, they're probably, like, throwing stuff, like, just out of total just you're mad at yourself, like, you don't
Right?
know how this could have
Or they
happened.
just or they just go outside and lay on the ground.
Yeah, yeah,
Just, like, totally this is raining on their face. I
yeah.
can't imagine what it feels like to have the other team's colored confetti just, like,
Coming.
falling all over. Like,
Like, you
oh
look
my
up,
gosh,
it's like hell is raining down
raining.
on you.
It's just it's getting stuck on you. You walk back to the locker room, it's stuck to the bottom of your shoe. The worst.
I know. You hear the other teams celebrating as you're walking off the field, like, "Oh god."
The saddest faces.
I know. It
I know
was
I
so
saw
sad.
oh, sorry. We keep, there's a little bit of a lag maybe, but, I saw a TikTok where it was like, "Girls are so dramatic," or men, "Girls are so dramatic, also men," and it was like the guys at the Super Bowl just, like, at their faces, but it's like, come on, be fair, like, that is devastating to lose, like, I would cry too,
I know,
but it
and
is
even
still funny.
I know. Even if it's your team, like, if you were a diehard Kansas City fan, like, if you were from Kansas City, like, you would be like, "What is happening?" Like, you'd be in total
We're
disbelief.
losing. I know, like, even when they just showed Taylor a little bit, like, her face
I
was like,
know.
"Oh, what? You
I
lose?
know.
I don't understand."
I know. She's not used to that.
Now she's like, "This is different than last year." At least she got to experience both sides with them.
Right, that's true. And
If
then
they can make that, they can make anything.
at what point do you think she was like, "I don't think we're gonna be going on the field after the game."
Right. And the way she was, like, completely covered getting onto her
Yeah,
private
yeah.
lane with all the umbrellas, and all you could see was the zoom in of her little red loafers.
The only thing left of the Kansas City game.
I know, but I do have an announcement. I was jealous of the Eagles fans, and I felt very left out because I don't do sports. But I decided this year I am gonna do football, and I picked a team after some quizzes. I took a quiz on which team I should
Oh,
support,
okay.
and based on my location too, and I know this will devastate everyone from Ohio, but I am going to do the Detroit Lions. It's gonna be my team
I
this year,
understand.
not the Browns.
I understand.
My dad's
As
gonna die.
as a Browns fan, I get it. Like,
And you know what? I live closer to Detroit than
you
Cleveland,
do.
so
Yeah.
this year I'm gonna get into it a little bit. I got my team.
If you're gonna hop on the bandwagon, you need to hop on the bandwagon of a winning team. So
Oh, are they winning team?
yeah,
Oh.
they should have made it to the to I mean, I think they could have gone to the Super Bowl for sure this
Oh,
year.
wow, maybe
Yeah,
next year.
yeah,
Or maybe this year, I mean.
yeah, yeah. Well, good. That's
So
exciting.
I'm gonna be rooting for them.
So we're gonna turn into a podcast that talks all about football.
Yeah, just you wait.
I mean, it is a little bit of fun, you know?
I know, like, I had fun like, I was jealous of the fans, like having their team get in there. And even if my team doesn't make it to the Super Bowl, just like the culture of it just seems fun, but I've never been able to get into it. Like I just don't like it, but I'm gonna try this year.
Good. Give it an effort. The old college try. See how it
I
goes.
don't, yeah.
Well, I only watched one thing this week, but it was a like limited series. So I think it was like 5 or 6 episodes. So it kind of took up my few evenings. But it was that apple cider vinegar. Did you see that
Oh
on
yeah.
Netflix? I didn't know the story behind it, but it was about this girl in Australia who basically just lied through her teeth about a ton of stuff. But the first thing that she lied about that kind of got her to be like an influencer was her cancer diagnosis.
Mm.
So she said that she had brain cancer, and then she kind of followed the um, template or the lifestyle of this other blogger who also had cancer, and she went to this place in Mexico for this like experimental like natural health thing, like oh my body can heal itself, and she started juicing and doing all this like cutting all the processed stuff out of her diet and stuff. So this girl, her name was Belle Gibson, she kind of like took that persona on, but then she became a lot more popular than the other person, and they kind of changed the story of the other person a little bit. Like it wasn't the name wasn't the same as Belle Gibson, but anyway, she I guess the laws are a little bit different in Australia maybe, but she ended up like not even doing jail time or anything after she got found out, and
Mhm.
she ended up because this it stopped there in the series, and then I read stuff online because obviously there's a bunch of news articles about it, and she ended up like making up other scams and personas like after that and trying to like monopolize off of that in different ways. So she clearly is like mentally ill where she feels that she
Mm.
needs to use this to gain attention. But it was good. Like it was definitely entertaining. That sounds weird when you're dealing with something like this, but the way that they shot it, it made it like visually it looked nice, and it was just entertaining to watch. Like it kept you wondering like, oh my god, what's going to happen next? And it was also just sad. Like what a freak to do something like that.
And you said this was scripted, not in a documentary
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, it was
It's
like
just based off of true story.
yeah,
I
it
do
seemed
remember. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Just keep interrupting. I do remember hearing like a little bit about that cancer thing.
Yeah, well, and you hear stories about that, unfortunately, like semi
More than,
frequently. Because
yeah.
there's that one, is it on Hulu, I think, about there's one about the writer for, was it, was it for SNL? I don't think it was SNL. I
Oh
think it was a
yeah.
show. Oh,
Grey's
Grey's
Anatomy.
Anatomy.
Yeah. Yeah. Where yes. It's just so insane that people do that. It's just so, but you do get attention for that because people feel bad for you because you're
I
going through
know.
something really horrible. And then for people to just take advantage of it is just so awful.
And I mean, I I do understand it. Like, even if you like if you went to work tomorrow and you're like, oh God, like I just am not feeling well, your coworkers would be like, oh no, do you need to go home? Like
Right.
they would make a fuss over that. So if somebody said, I just found out I have cancer. Like, you're gonna get that times 20, like,
Right.
and for somebody who just never had any positive, like, attention, that probably feels really good.
Mhm.
And obviously it's wrong, like, so horrible that there's people who are actually so ill and suffering like that.
Mhm.
And to lie about it is so disgusting, especially if you're like this woman was using money that she was raising for herself. Like, that's so awful.
I know. Yeah, just taking advantage. That's why it's when stuff like that comes up, you almost get skeptical about donating to people or trying to do the right thing because people are scamming you, and then you're like, wow, I could have gave that money to like somebody who was actually in trouble, and it almost makes you jaded in that way.
I know, like, you want to be careful what funds you're giving to and stuff.
Mhm.
But I would recommend watching it. I just saw stuff about it and saw that it had just come out, and I'm like, "Oh, I'll give that a try." And I didn't realize how long it was, but it took me like over 3 or 4 nights, I think, to get through it all just because I wasn't binging it. But yeah, it was a good watch. And then of course I love stuff like that because then I'm constantly like, "Wait, did that really happen? Wait, how did that go?"
Mhm. So where's this girl now?
I don't know exactly where she is right now, if she's in Australia or at one point she was in Africa, but she hasn't paid
Yeah.
any of the money back.
I feel like there's like this group of people too that just kind of get away with stuff like that, and they just keep going on, and they just like leave everything and go somewhere else, and it just weirdly works out for them. It's so
I
insane.
know. I know. Yeah, it's bizarre. Like, they don't ever get the repercussions of their actions. But then it's like, well, why wouldn't they keep doing it if they didn't get
Right.
in trouble last time?
Right. And
I
then
mean,
this can just add to their sob story. Nobody
yeah,
believed me. Everyone hates me. I had to flee my country. And
yeah.
ugh,
So, yeah, that was just an interesting watch for sure.
mhm.
I'm trying to think of
um,
any other
I know.
celeb news this week.
Just said Selena Gomez is coming out with some new music with
Oh,
Benny
yeah.
Blanco.
So, it sounded to me like it was going to be a whole album with him.
Yeah, that's what I didn't end up reading any of the comments under the post, and I didn't go to his or hers Instagram, so I don't know exactly what it is, but I wonder if it's like a smaller album or something because she did tease that she was in the studio, but that was all we got, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
there's like this album coming out.
And I wonder if it'll be a Spanish album or if it'll just be because,
English.
yeah, because, like, I don't know, I feel like that she's kind of been doing that with Amelia Perez, and I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah.
I also saw, just speaking of music, that the Jonas Brothers put a big statement out. And at first, when I was reading it, it was like, we've had such an amazing 20 years. I'm like, are they saying that they're done again? Like, we've already heard that. But then they're like, we've got exciting things coming, like, in the next days and weeks. So stay tuned. And I'm like, what could you guys possibly have? Like, a new album, or what are you doing?
Did did we already talk about this, or was I maybe listening to a podcast where they're having a Christmas movie?
I don't know if we talked about it or not, or if we just listened to the same podcast.
I know, like, what is this? Did we already
I don't know. But I did see that and that they like promoted
so are they
it.
right, so, like, are they gonna do, like, more acting-ish stuff, or
And is it gonna be that like cheesy, like Jonas, like Camp Rock type thing, or is it
Wait,
gonna be
we talk about this?
I don't know.
Why does that part of the conversation feel? We probably did.
If anyone listens to our episode and we already
Sorry.
talked about this, I'm sorry.
Let's have this conversation. Yeah, because it would be kind of fun to see them be like funny and silly and just kind of like go for it.
Because they are funny, like, they really are.
They are. They're hilarious. And I love that brother dynamic stuff.
Me
I just think it's
too.
so funny.
Me too. What's something new
But
we can say about this?
now I'm like questioning everything. But yeah,
Okay.
I do wonder what they're coming out with. I mean,
I thought it was weird though about the movie thing because it's like, why are you announcing it right now and it's not gonna come out for like 10 months?
right. I know that is strange unless we're going to see them. I swear we already had this conversation. Anyway, maybe we didn't have it on the podcast.
Yeah, maybe we didn't.
Well, whatever.
But
Yeah, it does seem weird to like announce it now, but I guess they do that with movies
yeah,
anyway. But it just seems with like a holiday movie, you wouldn't want to announce it that soon.
yeah. Yeah, I wonder if they're gonna do like because are they still doing a tour or are they done? I don't even know.
I think it's done.
So they just did
Might be wrong.
that, and then I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, maybe their new music or I don't know what their big announcements could be. I don't know. I have
No,
no idea.
I know. And there's not really like anything coming up where you're like, oh, maybe they are
Mhm.
hosting whatever.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see if there's any Joe Bro fans out there.
um, yeah, I don't know if I saw any other celeb stuff, but I did listen to Lessons in Chemistry, the book.
I heard that that show was really boring.
Well, I did not watch the show, but I saw Brie Larson was in it, I believe.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I thought that was weird because I thought this book was like one of those like lame romancy
Mhm.
type books, but when I was listening to it, that's not what it was. It was actually more of like a feminist story. So then I'm like, oh, that's why Brie Larson is in this. But it was actually really good because I think because I had such low expectations about that it was just going to be lame, but it wasn't. The only thing I didn't like, because it was about a woman who's like a chemist in the 60s. Now I can't remember the year, but basically women aren't being taken seriously. And then she falls in love with this guy and they can kind of work together and she gets taken a little more seriously because of him. But then he ends up passing away in like a freak accident. And then she ends up being pregnant when this all happens. And so then she's like being a mom and then like trying to work. And then she gets put on this cooking show and she's like, cooking is chemistry and stuff. And so she ends up doing that and she just really stands up for stuff. Like she's like, well, I don't want to wear that. And I want the kitchen to look like this. And but it ended up being like I really enjoyed it. It was just kind of a nice story. The only thing I thought was a little weird is sometimes you would get the perspective of the dog,
Oh.
which just kind of like threw me off. So I wonder if they even did that at all in the show because I wasn't that interested in watching the show even after the book. I was going to see how many episodes it had, but I wasn't that interesting. But I wonder if they took that all out and just made her have the dog, or that was the only
Hmm.
thing that I was like, that's a little weird.
Yeah, I based on what your description, I can kind of see how that might not translate to a super compelling
Weird.
series.
Yes.
But yeah, that's kind of weird about the dog.
I know. And then the dog had like its name was 630. And it was just, but the author, because at the end of the book, there was like a little interview with the author, and she was talking about, like, because she had, like, a dog with a name like that, so it made more sense, and it was, like, cute in the story, but I just thought going in and out of the dog's perspective every now and then was weird, and then she, like, trains the dog, like, to human words so it can, like, recognize, like, apple or tree or
Oh,
something, and it just was kind of a weird side thing. Like, I think it was fine because also the dog would, like, help out in the lab, kinda just, like, funny. Like, I
yeah.
thought that was fine, but then some of the other stuff was a little I was like, "I don't know, that's a little strange."
Yeah,
But it
that
was still
sounds
just, like, a
weird.
nice story. I enjoyed it. Like, I liked how she went from being a chemist and, like, things happening in her life, and then she becomes famous for being, like, doing women's work,
Mhm.
basically, but then she turns it into something else, and it was nice.
Yeah, that sounds like a cute read.
Yeah, it was a cute little story, and it was just a nice change from, you know, all the weird
Yeah,
stories.
yeah. I'm reading a book right now too, and it's one of the what's it called? Nights and Weekends. It's kind of like a newer one, I think, and it's one of those ones where it kind of bounces around between like a group of people and how they're all connected and stuff, but it'll
Mhm,
go from like one part of the chapter will be from this one's perspective and then it'll switch to somebody else's, and
mhm,
I do like those types of stories where things are all like woven together and you're not just stuck on like, two people or whatever.
mhm.
Makes it kind of fun to read.
Yeah, I do like a good story where it's like that because it does
Mhm.
end up being kinda fun, especially if it's kinda like a thrillery book.
Yeah. You're
And you're
having to
like,
figure
"Oh, what
out.
actually happened here?" Yeah, or like, "This character knows this, and that one doesn't know it yet," and you're like,
Yeah.
"What? It's fun."
Yeah. It's to write something like that though, that would take
It's
so much
so confusing.
organization.
I know. You definitely would need to draw a race board with the
Yeah.
webs and keeping
Yeah,
that
when
organized.
you write your outline, remember when we had to write those in school? You're following that outline, you gotta keep things straight.
No, right?
Ugh.
Oh my gosh. I am doing another book right now. It's the second book of the Indian Lake series, and the first one was called My Heart is a Chainsaw, and I love that name. And but I haven't, I mean, that must have been like at least a year and a half ago. And now I'm finally on the second one called Don't Fear the Reaper. And I'm not really enjoying it that much. And I don't know if it's just because I don't remember a ton about the first book or if I just don't like it and it's really long. So I'm kind of struggling to get through it. Like I'm just not as compelled like the in the first one. I mean, I can't even remember everything it was about, but it was basically this girl and she's obsessed with horror movies and it's like she keeps like going through these like manic thoughts of like, well then in this movie like it but it was really fun of just like her talking about all these horror movies and then she ends up like killing people in the process of trying not to. And it's just kind of a fun one, but I don't know if I'm misremembering that a bit. I meant to look it up a little bit, like a summary. But this one is like totally different. It's like that girl is now like uh, I can't really figure it out if she's a lawyer or a detective or
Oh,
what, but it's just not as compelling. But there is a third in the series that I think that just came out this year. But this one isn't making me want to
read it.
listen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
So
always disappointing.
I know, and I don't I feel like I wish what because this one has more or like other characters involved with it, and I kind of wish it would have been like each book was like about a different person, kind
Yeah,
of like one of
yeah,
those type of trilogies, but it isn't.
yeah. Um, yeah, I don't really have like a lot of other things. This week has been kind of a dry week.
I know. Well, I did just listen to the podcast called What I Will Say, and she did a little bit of a deep dive on trigger warning Justin Baldoni
Oh
and
God.
how he is. But I think people should listen to that because she brings up a lot of the stuff. This is not the first time he has been involved with workplace issues and has been sued. And I think both times were settled out of court, or I don't know, didn't fully
Yeah.
go to court. But there's workplace issues 2 other times. And they were saying, it felt like people, normal thinking people were like, yes, Blake Lively could be a brat, but he is not a right person. And they were saying the same things that we kind of said too, which was, if he's such a big feminist, why did he try to take down a woman?
Mm,
Why did he? And she did a couple segments too, like put your money where your mouth is. And she's like, it's really hard to find anything where he's like donated to any of these causes that he speaks so highly about.
interesting.
Hmm. But it was
I
just
mean,
nice to hear from people who are on the right side of history. And she even said too, like they could take this to court and we could be proved wrong, but
yeah.
she's like, she also is kind of a little more negative about how the court is going to go because she thinks it's going to be a really, not that she's a lawyer or anything, but thinks it's going to be really hard to find an unbiased jury for Blake Lively. And he
Mm,
is just smearing her name and she's already guilty in the court of public opinion. And
yeah.
he could win, but they're like, no, I still believe everything she said because it falls in line with other stuff that he has done.
Well, I think it's just nice to hear a different opinion at this
It
point. Like,
is.
we're not, whether it is right or wrong or whatever, it's like at this stage, everybody's just ganging up on one person. And it does, to me, it's not so black and white and cut and dry. So I don't
No.
like that we're doing that. It's like everybody now, like, it's just one of those things where you want to find fault. So of course you're going to find it.
Right.
It's like, and that's what they're doing to Blake. And it's just
Mhm.
like ridiculous. Like, just, and then how she's trying to be like, I want a gag order. And then the judge denied that. And it's like, they should have one though, because he continues to keep bringing stuff up. He has a whole
Yes.
website, for God's sake. I mean, this is
I
just
know.
getting, ridiculous. Like, there's, if you, I get trying to defend yourself, and I don't think that there's
Right.
anything wrong with that. And you should, and you have every right to. But at this point, you're going above and beyond, and you're not just defending yourself anymore. You're trying to drag the other person through the mud so that they can never be clear ever again. Like, let it play
Yes.
out in court.
I know. If you're so confident in everything that's happening, and I do think that this situation is so layered. And I
Hmm.
think we need to take out, yes, Blake Lively could be the worst, but that does not mean she didn't experience things in the workplace from him who has a pattern of this.
Yeah, and that's what the
Oh,
bottom line is. So
yes, at
that's
the
what
end
we've
of the
been
day,
saying the whole time.
I know. And it was so nice to hear somebody else bring this up and who actually like kind of looked into him a little bit more.
I hate to when people will get like random little facts wrong. Like, I'm not y- perfect with everything either. I'm sure we've
Right.
said stuff on this podcast that has been a bit inaccurate, but it was annoying me so much. I don't remember what podcast I was listening to, but they were saying how he has the rights to the second book. And
Mhm.
I was like, in my head, I even said it out loud. No, he doesn't. He does not. Like, that was
Right.
proven a long time ago. He does not have any rights to the second book. He never did. Like,
No,
stop twisting that narrative
saying it.
around
I know.
when
Stop
that's
making
what he
things up.
wants.
Stop. Right. It's like stop saying and or just stop saying that she secretly was in love with him and that's why this was wrong. Stop
Yeah,
saying she wants the rights to the second book from him and is trying to take it from him.
right.
And there was a scan. I knew he directed that 5 Feet Apart, and part of something that happened with
Yes.
him is that he took that screenplay.
Yep, I read that too.
So this guy isn't just this big ethical person.
Yeah. I mean, we just need to let it play out in court at this point, and
I
it's gonna go
know.
on because their court date isn't for, like, a year, right? So, I did see that Colleen Hoover is back on Instagram, and she has wiped it
I
clean
know.
of anything to do with the movie.
I know. Well, Verity's gonna be filming soon, I'm sure. So
I
she's
don't
gonna have
know
to
what
do all
she
the stuff with that.
Yeah, I mean, truly, like, what a nightmare situation for her, like,
I know,
absolute
like,
nightmare.
especially because she like took Blake's side. So it's
Yeah.
I don't know how any of this other stuff's gonna do. They're probably just gonna see how Verity does and then go
Mhm.
from there.
'Cause they
But
might
it's like
not
that
even
kind of
do a second one.
right, because it's like they just it all got so tarnished.
I know. I know.
Ah,
But
anyway, that
what
was
are
a good
you gonna
podcast.
do? I just yeah,
Um,
I can't keep diving into it anymore though.
I
It's like,
know. I was just glad to hear someone speaking rationally about this
yeah,
situation.
thank God.
I know. And the last media I guess I had was Sue Klebold's book, which I won't get too much into because it's so heavy, but Dylan Klebold's mother, who was part of the Columbine shooting, or was the
Mhm.
school shooter. And there was a couple things that I did not like about the book, or just because there is such a narrative around, the two different boys, Dylan and Eric. But I still think that at the end of the day, the book did have a good message. And it allegedly, when she was selling the book, because it's been out for a while, donated the money or the profits from the book. But I mean, I just rented it. So it's not like I
Yeah,
paid for
yeah.
anything. But I did like the overall message too of just not giving up on or like really paying attention to your child and their mental health, and that it does. And I know we have more discussions about that now than we did in the 90s.
Mhm.
But the way she's like, just don't think it's ever out of the possibility of you knowing actually what your kids are up to or how they're feeling, just to always keep trying, even when it feels like you're not going to be able to get through to them, but never give up. And I do, at the end of the day, feel like that was a really good message to
Yeah.
give. And I actually thought she did a really, because I was nervous, especially in the beginning, that she was gonna like kind of misdirect the blame to Eric Harris, because Eric Harris was clearly a very troubled young man, but her son did still participate in this. And she does acknowledge that
Mhm.
pretty well, I think. And I thought she did, because there's at the end, I was like kind of blown away by her when she was talking about pretty much all the signs she missed. Not that, because it's hard to anticipate that a kid that came from like a nice family would do something like this, but I thought she did a really good job of, at the end, picking up on all those signs. And of course, you want to anticipate them to be a school shooter, but just all like, it just really like took me aback when she was like, and when we were at this party, just this family party, he was kind of quiet and didn't but then he kind of like perked up a little bit. She's like, but when I look back at pictures from that day, he looked so annoyed. He looked so angry he was there, and just a bunch of different stories like that. And I was
Mm.
like, oh my gosh, like it
Wow.
just took me by surprise, but I thought it was actually a really good book. And I think we do need that insight. And I do, just personal opinion, think that Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold are kind of an outlier, that they actually came from like nice upper middle class families.
Mhm.
And I do feel like a lot of these perpetrators, especially when it comes to the school shooting and the children, come from really horrible homes.
Right, like broken in some way,
Yeah, and just
abused or
they
whatever,
were
yeah.
abused and all this stuff.
Mhm.
So I don't feel like it's very often. So even though she did have all this insight, and at the end of the day, she did have that really good message, it still doesn't give any kind of answer, or it gives not any other answers for other atrocities that happen. But
Yeah.
it was a good book.
It is
In my
interesting too, like, her kinda overall message behind it, and, like,
Mhm.
just, like, you think you know what's going on with your kids,
Mhm.
and
And
you
you
think,
don't.
yeah, and you think, like, "Oh, my kid would never be involved in something like that,"
Right.
or just for a ton of different things, and then I think back at things that we did or said when we were younger that our parents didn't know about, like, they had no
Right.
clue, and I
I
mean,
know.
obviously nothing to an extreme level, but, like, having that, like, when they say talk to your kids, like, it
Mhm.
literally is talk to your kids and build that rapport and that trust,
Yeah.
because then they're going to come to you when they're going to feel comfortable when they are off or something bad did happen or they got themselves into a situation, versus just keeping it all in. And then this is an extreme case here,
Right.
but like,
But it could happen. I know, and, like, at the
yeah.
end of the day, she's like, "This can be your kid even if
Hmm.
they aren't that kid." And one of the things too she said was, Dylan always just kinda did what he was supposed to. There weren't really any issues up until, towards the shooting that was happening, but she said their older son was starting to, like, get into partying and stuff, and they had a little more issues with him. So it was like Dylan kind of fell to the wayside, where they're like, "Oh, well, he's just the kid that does what he's supposed to. He's
Yeah.
polite, he does everything. We don't have to worry about
Yeah.
him." And that
Yeah.
was just like a big misstep, and she really acknowledges that, and she even says, like, towards the end, he she's like, "He was always a tall and thinner kid," but she's like, "He was thin and did not look good towards that end there." And she's like, "I just had no idea." And then there's like these, because with Columbine, we have all those like tapes and all the
Mhm.
journal entries and stuff, but there's the basement tapes that have not been released, because she's like, "I just didn't want people to see it because it was so," she's like, "I didn't want people to idolize it or anything," but I do feel like she did say that he like talks bad about the brother. And she's like,
Mhm.
when she saw these videos of this like rage that she had, she was like mad. She's like, "What is wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? Why are you saying these things?" And it was just really like she had no idea.
What a challenging thing to come to terms with too, like,
Mhm.
as a parent, and to have all that evidence that was right in front of you and you just
And to
didn't
just
know.
I know, and she's like, "Now I know that teenagers' depression is different than what it looks like in adults, like irritability, and just the
Mm.
stuff you think more of, like, just being a grumpy teenager and what's normal and what's not, versus,
Yeah.
like, an adult, it just presents itself differently." And she's like, "I just did not know that."
Yeah.
Well, we weren't having those conversations
No,
So,
not at
basically
all.
since 2020,
Yeah,
it's like
literally, because that wasn't happening when we were younger.
no. So, I'm trying to think if
Wow.
there's anything else that was, like, kind of enlightening.
So brave of
Well,
her
she's
to do that too.
I know, and especially to I was actually surprised by all the support that I mean, obviously, there was a lot of haters when everything happened and they were sued.
Mhm.
Um, but she did say she wrote to the victims' families, and she did hear back from some of them, which I
Wow.
thought was really brave of those people, are just really genuine of those people, like, crazy. Oh, and the other thing she said, which I thought was interesting because we still see this kind of, I don't know if you wanna call it fangirl behavior with, like, criminals. I mean, we even saw it with the
Yeah,
Menendez brothers, Gypsy Rose, even, Ted Bundy now. Charles
yeah.
Manson was married, and she said she would get, like, these love letters
Oh my
from
god.
girls just talking about how they love she's like, "What is happening?" And then she, can't remember what she said. Oh, that was another reason she didn't want those basement tapes out because she was already getting that stuff. And she said these young kid because with Columbine, it was like a big thing. Like they were or like the conqueror of bullies. So she
Yeah,
said she would get like these messages like on their home machines and be like your son like from guys or like kids and be like your son is a god and stuff,
yeah.
and she's like, oh my gosh, like what is happening here? And I'm like, I'm not even surprised by that. Like I completely believe that that was happening because we still see that kind of behavior.
Well, look what just happened with that Luigi guy
Yeah,
who,
it's like,
I mean, trigger warning again, but like shot that CEO in broad daylight. And we had people that were like, yeah, down with, insurance companies and big pharma, and they're the
yeah, they're like,
criminals.
he
It's
did the
like,
right thing,
whoa.
making edits of him on
Yeah, it's like, this is
TikTok.
deranged.
I know, it's just, ugh, I mean, it's just a crazy. I don't
Yeah,
even
it
know what to
really, yeah. That's the human psyche is so
no, it's so
complicated.
strange. I know, and even we with when we were first talking about Gypsy Rose, we were like back and forth with it too. We're like,
Mhm.
okay, she was extremely abused, and I am glad she's can hopefully recover, but there was still a murder, and there was
Yeah,
still this, and it's
yeah,
so complicated.
I know. There's that moral gray area.
I know where you're like,
I mean, I wouldn't say that that necessarily
clearly
exists
it's
with
happening here.
Columbine, but
Yeah,
yeah, but for sure with Gypsy Rose, yeah.
right. But
Wow,
y-
interesting.
yeah,
Interesting read.
it was really interesting. It's very, very heavy, especially
Mhm.
because it's just fully about children dying.
Yeah, awful.
So awful, but still really good, and just, you know,
A different
just a
insight.
crate. Right. And it's like you don't think it's you or your kids or you would never do that, but the reality is that it could be. And
Yeah.
ooh. But I mean, even just like thinking of people where you almost get like these school shooter-esque vibes, like that type of person. Like, I mean, even in our school, we're like, if somebody's gonna do it, it's gonna be that kid,
Oh,
and then it
yeah.
never ends up happening.
Mhm.
But the amount of times that it's planned and it's just so scary to even think about, but
I know you can't think about it or else you'll
no,
just lose it, you know?
freak out. Right.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
anywho,
well, sorry for the downer ending.
it's still a good read. I
Yeah.
stand by that.
Yeah, I think I just yeah, it's interesting to hear different perspectives, and we don't I don't know, you don't hear that one very often,
I
so
know.
not that I
And it's
want to,
rare
like, I hope that we don't have to hear them
have to hear about,
often.
right? And it's kind of rare to hear from somebody who takes responsibility
Totally.
and doesn't just trauma dump on you. And I know this is a very niche situation in a way, but I mean, there's so many books that you're just like, this is just a trauma dump and
Mhm.
we're not getting anything out of it. There's no resolution. And just sometimes it's like, even though this was a super heavy book, it's just like a or breath of fresh air to
Yeah.
just hear somebody take responsibility for stuff. And it's like I said, I didn't agree with a few things that she said, but I also saw where she was coming from. But still, it was just someone is taking responsibility for something.
It's almost more therapeutic that way too, I mean, I think
Yeah.
if I were to write, like, I used to write in my journal a lot, and it would help me just to, like, get the feelings out, and, like,
Mhm.
by the end of my, like, writing, a lot of times I would totally come full circle because I have thought through what I was feeling as I'm writing it,
Mhm.
and sometimes it starts out like really kind of like just dumpy of all my emotions or whatever, but
Right.
then you work through it, and by the end you're like, oh, well, now that I'm thinking about it, or this is how I'm going to move forward. So, like, to hear some of the books, we've said this before, but that we've read in the past where it never gets that far. Like, it's just these
Right.
are all the horrible things that happened, and they didn't happen because of anything I did. They all happened to me, and it's like,
Right.
well, it would have been nicer to hear some introspective
Self
and
Yeah, or like I wonder what that other person's version of this is,
yeah, and
cuz
and
and
just to, like, work through it that way, I think
right,
does make it more therapeutic for the writer
it
too.
does. I know, and just to hear them get to that point, even if they aren't that point in the beginning of the book. But I mean, some of the books you get done with it and you're like, well, what did we learn here? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
And I don't know if people sometimes write the books, like if we're just talking about like celebrity memoirs, do they? I think a big part of that is writing them too soon and not
yeah,
waiting till it's more at the end of your life. Where if you do like Jane Fonda, you have a lot more self reflection and you do have some of that like trauma y stuff, but then you have them being like, but this is what happened. This is what I was thinking at the
mhm,
time, but now that I'm older, I can see blah blah
yeah,
blah. So it's just nice. And it makes you feel better as a reader. You're like, okay, I'm walking away from this person because there's been some books that I've walked away from them and I'm like, I am worried about you.
yeah,
You are well. But it is nice when you get to like actually hear from somebody and you're like, okay, you went through a lot, but I feel like you're okay and you're
yeah,
gonna be okay. And it
yeah,
just makes you feel better at the end of the book instead of being like, oh my gosh.
yeah, like, what's going on with them? Like,
Right.
well, speaking of that, hopefully our next book for book club is gonna be JoJo's book. Um, I was able to get it way earlier than I thought I was going to be able to, and you are very close as well. So
Yes.
hopefully we can do that one for our next read. And I can't remember the title of that book, so I'm gonna look it up real quick unless you remember it off the top of
Under
your head.
or over the influence or something? Over the influence?
Of course I can't.
I
Yeah,
am
Over the Influence. Yeah,
I am a little nervous for this one. I
I am
do
too.
think that it could be what we were just describing
I
as
do too.
not, but I am very curious because I do know that she had issues in the industry, and I would like to hear from somebody who got like trapped, because we don't have the Kesha book yet. So it will be
Yeah,
interesting to hear like a little bit more insight into stuff like that because I just find that topic just so devastating, and I don't really understand what the music industry gets out of not letting artists
create.
um just create. Yeah, it's like just
Mhm.
let them go. So I wonder if we'll get a little
I'm
insight into what
hoping
that's like.
so because, I don't know what else we would be getting for an entire book if we don't if the meat and potatoes of it isn't about her experience in the music industry. And it, like, yeah, you said she does have an interesting story where, like, she was really big and then all of a sudden, she
On.
was gone.
Didn't
So
hear from
what,
her anymore.
yeah, like, what happened there? Like, I do want to hear her perspective, but at the same time, like we just said, she's pretty young, and not to say that somebody can't live a lot of life in 30 whatever years, but it's it can't compare to the, like, retrospective of somebody who might be in, like, just say their 60s or something, so,
Right.
and somebody who's a little bit more removed from the situation, where even though she was kind of young when all this happened with the music industry, it's like you're still pretty close to it, like, it hasn't
I
been
know,
that
and
long.
right, and for it to be so deep rooted too,
Yeah.
like, I don't know if I'm curious to see if we're at the point where she's on the up and up, or if this, because I'm also okay with the book just talking about that, or like getting up to that point and maybe having kind of a weird, or like not a conclusive ending, if we're getting a lot of what happened with that.
Yeah.
But like I think like Jeanette McCurdy's book, I think that worked with how she did her book. Like, I think it
Mhm.
can work, but I don't know if this book will work like that, but
Because Jeanette McCurdy was
scared.
so focused on the mom part of it too.
Right. And yeah, so like that worked because it
Yeah.
wasn't like we had to have like this, we had a resolution, the mom
Yeah.
passing away.
Right.
So I'll be
Yeah.
curious if we get a resolution here.
JoJo's, yeah. So we'll see. That'll probably be just because February is a short month and neither of us have been able to start that yet. That'll probably be our March book club, I'm guessing. So you all have a little bit of time to read that one along with us if you'd like to. And we will be excited to talk about it.
Mhm.
So I get, yeah, I really don't have anything else. So if you don't really either, this will just be kind of a little shorter episode.
Yeah, no, we're out of stuff hopefully
Still over an hour,
next
which
week.
is
Yeah.
long for some
We
podcasts.
drug we drug it out as long as we could.
Yes, we did. For my recommendation this week, I'm just gonna do apple cider vinegar because that was the only thing that I really want.
And I am gonna just recommend that podcast episode if you wanna just get a little less one-sided with the big Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni situation.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to listen to that too.
Yeah, I think it's worth listening to. I
Mhm.
think it was a quicker one. I think it was like an hour maybe, or under an
Okay.
hour. So
Yeah.
just to give you a little bit of him being bad.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening. Don't forget to check us out on socials. And most importantly, please give us some reviews. We'd love to get some more reviews on Apple, or you can review us on Spotify. Give us the follow or subscribe on YouTube. If you really want to, you can, I don't know, write a nice review of our podcast along with a nice 5-star rating, or you can comment on Instagram or something to give us some engagement. Um, so that would just be lovely. If anybody is looking for a Valentine's Day gift for us, that would be amazing. 5 stars.
Skip the chocolate, skip the flowers.
Give us 5 stars. Oh, I forgot to say, this is our 100th episode.
Oh gosh, we didn't do anything special.
The
Maybe
worst,
next week.
yeah, the worst 100th episode.
101, like the
Yeah,
Dalmatians. See,
we'll
that's better.
celebrate that next week.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week for a celebration.
We remember. Bye.